In the heart of the California desert lies the Salton Sea, California's largest lake, an inland ocean that was never meant to exist. Its shimmering surface stretches across the arid landscape, a striking blue anomaly surrounded by endless sand and sun-baked earth. To the untrained eye, it might seem like a natural wonder, but its story is far from ordinary. The Salton Sea's origin isn't rooted in ancient geology or the slow work of nature, but in a colossal human error that unfolded in 1905. It was a time of bold ambition, when engineers dreamed of transforming the desert into fertile farmland. Determined to bring life to the parched Imperial Valley, engineers set out to divert the mighty Colorado River through a network of canals and headgates. But their designs were no match for the unpredictable forces of nature. Heavy rains and melting snow from distant mountains overwhelmed the fragile infrastructure, exposing its flaws. The river burst through its barriers, unleashing a torrent of water that surged into the Salton Basin. For 16 relentless months, floodwaters poured into the ancient lakebed, which lay hundreds of feet below sea level, transforming the desert floor into a vast inland sea. In a desperate race against time, workers dumped rocks, earth, and even entire railroad cars into the breach, hoping to stem the flood. But the Colorado River's power was overwhelming, and their efforts seemed almost futile as the water kept coming. By late 1906, after months of struggle and innovation, the breach was finally sealed. But the landscape had been forever changed. A 45-mile-long, 15-mile-wide sea now shimmered where desert once reigned, its waters trapped in a basin with no natural outlet. This accidental creation stood as a testament to both human ambition and the untamable power of nature. The Salton Sea was a reminder that even our grandest plans can be upended in an instant. In the years that followed, an entirely new ecosystem sprang up around the lake. The Salton Sea was sustained not by rainfall, but by agricultural runoff from the very farms the engineers had hoped to nourish. Birds flocked to its shores, fish thrived in its waters, and life found a way in this unlikely oasis. The Salton Sea became an anomaly, an artificial oasis in one of the driest places on the continent, a shimmering blue expanse surrounded by barren desert. It was a place of contradiction, where lush life met harsh wilderness. Its strange and dramatic beginning set the stage for a saga of boom, bust, and environmental reckoning. Over the decades, the Salton Sea would become a playground for vacationers, a haven for wildlife, and later, a symbol of ecological crisis as its waters receded and its future grew uncertain. The story of the Salton Sea is still unfolding, a living reminder of how human ambition and nature's unpredictability can shape the world in ways no one could have imagined. In the decades after its creation, the Salton Sea became an unlikely oasis. By the 1950s and 60s, developers marketed it as the California Riviera, drawing crowds to new resort towns like Salton City and Bombay Beach. Celebrities, boaters, and families flocked to its clear waters and thriving sport fishery, stocked with saltwater species from the Gulf of California. The constant inflow of agricultural runoff kept the lake full, creating a bustling aquatic paradise. The sea's wetlands became a crucial stopover for millions of migratory birds, making it a hotspot for wildlife and birdwatchers alike. The shoreline buzzed with activity, boats, laughter, and birdsong. But beneath the surface, the very factors that created this paradise were quietly sowing the seeds of its destruction. The party was in full swing, but the clock was already ticking. The Salton Sea's flaw was fatal. It had no natural outlet. Trapped in a desert basin, the water had nowhere to go, and this simple fact would shape its tragic fate. Water flowed in as agricultural runoff, carrying with it fertilizers, pesticides, and other chemicals from nearby farms. The only way water left was through evaporation, which concentrated these salts and toxins year after year. By the 1970s, salinity soared, surpassing even the Pacific Ocean. The water became increasingly toxic, a harsh environment for any living creature. Fertilizers and pesticides fueled massive algal blooms, turning the water green and murky. These blooms depleted oxygen, suffocating aquatic life and creating vast, dead zones where nothing could survive. Fish populations crashed dramatically. Only the hardiest tilapia managed to survive for a while, but even they eventually succumbed to the toxic, oxygen-starved waters. The beaches became littered with millions of rotting fish, their bones bleaching in the sun. The overwhelming stench drove people away, turning once popular shores into ghostly wastelands. Bird populations suffered as their food sources vanished. Outbreaks of disease fueled by the toxic environment, killed thousands more, leaving the skies and shores eerily silent. The dream of the California Riviera was over, replaced by decay and ecological ruin. Once bustling resorts and marinas now stood abandoned, their structures crumbling into the dust. Marinas crumbled and the beaches turned to bone. The vibrant life that once thrived here was replaced by silence and decay. The Salton Sea had become a dystopian landscape, a haunting reminder of what happens when an ecosystem is pushed beyond its limits. Its collapse stands as a stark warning of the consequences that follow when nature's limits are ignored, and human ambition outpaces environmental responsibility. As the Salton Sea shrank, vast stretches of toxic lakebed, playa, were exposed. This wasn't ordinary dust, it was laced with salt, heavy metals, and pesticide residues. Desert winds whipped the dust into the air, spreading it for miles and triggering a public health crisis for over 650,000 people in the Imperial and Coachella valleys. Respiratory illnesses soared, especially among children in low-income, predominantly Latino communities. Every windy day brought a new wave of poison, with asthma rates nearly triple the national average. The people suffering most had the least to do with the sea's creation. The toxic dust is a stark reminder of environmental injustice and decades of neglect. It's a crisis that can no longer be ignored. Amid the devastation, a tiny survivor endures: the remarkable desert pupfish. This endangered species thrives in the sea's harshest margins, shallow hypersaline pools and drainage ditches, where few others survive. Pupfish can withstand extreme temperatures and salinity levels twice that of the oceans, a rare adaptation. Their resilience is a testament to evolution, but their future remains fragile and uncertain. As the sea shrinks, their last refuges are drying up, pushing them ever closer toward extinction. Conservationists race to protect these inch-long fish, a symbol of hope in a dying ecosystem. The pupfish remind us that even in decay, life still persists. California is finally acting to address the Salton Sea crisis. The Species Conservation Habitat Project aims to create managed wetlands and shallow habitats on the exposed lakebed, especially where the new river flows in. The goal: provide refuge for migratory birds and cover toxic dust. Engineers are building berms, ponds, and islands, pumping in water to support bird food sources and planting vegetation as wind breaks. But critics say these efforts are just a band-aid, covering tens of thousands of acres. While the sea is projected to shrink by hundreds of thousands, ambitious proposals like importing seawater or desalination remain out of reach. For now, restoration is a race against time, with the future of the Salton Sea hanging in the balance. The scale of the problem is immense, and solutions are partial at best. The Salton Sea is a cautionary tale of short-term thinking and ecological neglect. Once a shimmering oasis in the California desert, it was born from a man-made accident and quickly became a symbol of both hope and hubris. For decades, people flocked to its shores, drawn by the promise of prosperity and recreation, but beneath the surface, trouble was brewing. What began as an economic gamble became a public health and environmental disaster. As the water receded and the salinity rose, fish died off in droves, and the once thriving resorts were abandoned. Toxic dust storms now sweep across the region, threatening the health of nearby communities. Its decline shows how water politics, agricultural practices, and political inertia are deeply interconnected. The choices made upstream, diverting rivers, overusing groundwater, and prioritizing short-term gains, have had lasting consequences downstream. The dust and water crises here ripple far beyond the desert, affecting distant cities and ecosystems. Airborne toxins travel for miles, impacting the health of children and families who may never set foot near the Salton Sea. There are no quick fixes for problems a century in the making. The landscape bears the scars of decades of neglect, and reversing the damage will require patience, innovation, and collaboration on an unprecedented scale. Real solutions require a fundamental shift in how we value and manage water. We must rethink our relationship with natural resources, recognizing that sustainability is not just an ideal, but a necessity for survival. The Salton Sea is a mirror, reflecting the consequences of ignoring nature's balance. It reminds us that every action has a reaction, and that the environment cannot be an afterthought. Yet, its story is not over. There is still hope, and the possibility of renewal remains if we act with urgency and care. It's a call to action, to learn from past mistakes and work for a more sustainable future. Communities, scientists, and activists are coming together, determined to restore what has been lost and protect what remains. The fate of the Salton Sea is a warning and a chance to do better, for this place and for the planet. The choices we make now will echo for generations to come.